Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel, breaking down Steve Sarkisian's pregame Zoom call before Texas takes on Mississippi State on Saturday. This edition of On Texas Football, as is the case with every Thursday video CJ and I do after the Sark Zoom call, is brought to you by our friends at Hays City Store. You know, there's a few restaurants, very few, that once you go to them, you just know right away that it's a special place, and Hays City Store is one of those places. It's scratch-made Texas comfort food. They've got their famous truck stop enchiladas, the award-winning chicken fried steak, the homemade desserts. It's all good, and it's all made from scratch. They've got live music 6 nights a week, 50 beer taps, ice-cold long necks, and tasty margaritas. They got 13 TVs in their ice house. Makes that the perfect game day setup, whether you're talking about Saturdays or Sundays. And if you're there on Sunday, get that brunch menu from 10 to 3. Also, Hays City Store is dog friendly. They've got a tree net for the kids. So get your whole crew together and get them out to Hays City Store. For more information, check out the website, HaysCityStoreTX.com. Hays City Store, it's uniquely Texas. CJ, I think if there was one big takeaway from Sark's Zoom call, it's that CJ Baxter, it sounds like he's going to play. How much is to be determined, but Sark certainly thinks that's going to be a game changer for this offense to have C4 back in the mix.
Yeah, Sark said over the past week and a half, the Texas medical staff has really been ramping up participation and activity with Baxter to make sure that he can trust the soft tissue injury that's been lingering since really the entire season. It's felt like, Jeff. So that's very key. He said maybe not 20 carries, right? That's probably unrealistic, but certainly enough to give a breather to Trey Wisner to allow both Baxter, Wisner, and that offensive line to play effectively. That is the key. And look, I even asked him, I said, with Baxter back, I know he provides more to you in pass protection than maybe any other running back as well. He said it's beyond that. Baxter provides a bit of a calming presence, Jeff, and we talk about it for Arch kind of settling in, that offensive line to settle down. Baxter's return to the field is more than just carrying the ball up the middle of the field for 3 or 4 yards, but more so being able to walk to the sideline or look in the huddle and see a calming presence. That can't be overstated how important it is going on the road for the 4th straight game or playing away from home for the 4th straight game and doing so in a hostile environment with the cowbells going.
And I don't think it can be stated enough, CJ, if CJ Baxter is back in the mix, even if it's only for a handful of carries, they've got to have diversity in the run game because, Sark talked about the opening script and some other issues on offense. But, CJ, I think it's pretty clear for this offense to click in the way that it needs to have that formula to win, they have got to be able to run the football. Even if you look at the Oklahoma game, like the overall offensive output, it's not like it was just, robust. I mean, 302 total yards, 4.9 per play, but they were able to establish the run. They went 10 for 17 on third down. They've got to be able to get some sort of a run game going.
Yeah, and I think part of that starts with Sark himself, right? Being able to willingly commit to the run game if your first couple of runs don't necessarily yield the production that you were hoping for, right? We didn't see a lot of the run game even attempted against Kentucky. Only 2 first-quarter rush attempts. You only really had 3 rush attempts for Trey Wisner in the first half. You have to start with the attempt to run the football. Everything else will build off of that. But that's going to go back to the play calling on the opening script, Jeff. We just didn't, and we haven't seen a lot of run plays called over the last year and a half on that opening script. But Sark thinks that there may be a remedy for that coming up.
Yeah, and, if you look at the last game where you really had Baxter and Wisner together, it was the Ohio State game. And in that game, you ran it 37 times for 166 yards. You were 4.5 per carry. And that's, again, the Ohio State game wasn't that great. Overall, it wasn't, but you got to remember, too, you had a turnover in there. You had a goal-to-go possession where you didn't score. You had a couple of those. I mean, you were able to move the ball. I don't think it's that much of a coincidence that the 2 games against Power 4 competition where both of those guys were on the field and healthy, it's probably the most consistent you've been moving the ball from start to finish in a game against P4 competition this year.
Yeah, definitely. 26 rush attempts, 120 yards between the backs themselves. Not a single rush, Jeff, even exceeded 15 yards. So that tells you that they were consistently picking up 3 to 7 to 8 yards per play. And look, that starts to wear on a defense. Texas saw that against Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. Now, if you're able to get that similar type of production, boy, does that take a lot of weight off of the shoulders of Arch Manning. And it allows that offensive line, who hasn't been playing well but is big, to lean on its opposing side. So that can certainly pay dividends. And I think for all Texas fans sitting and watching at home, they're probably saying, yeah, we'd love to see some of this. So it should be a benefit for Texas to have Baxter back. And above all, it should help play complementary football on both sides of the football, but more specifically on that offensive side.
CJ Sark also, he was asked about the opening script, and he also mentioned this in relation to your question about CJ Baxter and pass protection, that the offense needs to understand, look, you're not going to have a game where just you're able to stack multiple positive plays on top of each other. That's just not the way it works. And I think that lent a little vision into kind of a peek behind the curtain at something that I've mentioned on our Wednesday night live stream, and I'm struggling to put a label on it still, but just the emotional fragility, the emotional instability on offense. Yes, when they get things going their way, they can be productive and it can mount in a positive way, but we've also seen, CJ, the reverse, that it can also snowball and go backwards really, really fast to where this team is behind the 8 ball there, quicksand, and they just can't get out of it. From a mental standpoint, CJ Baxter's got to help us. CJ, what do you think Sark needs to do in this game from a play calling philosophy standpoint to where this offense can sustain a few negative plays here and there, because they're going to happen?
Yeah. I think a large part of that stems from establishing that run game, Jeff. I mean, you call a run play on 1st and 10 and you get 5. I mean, that might not feel like the biggest deal, but that's a success for the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way that they can look back and say, hey, we're in 2nd and manageable, right? Can be in 3rd and short, and then, hey, a 1st down, and then all of a sudden you've got a bit of a drive going. So it starts there, and maybe it's the inclusion of more Arch Manning runs. I'm going to be interested to see how often they call some keeps with CJ Baxter in the backfield with them. We haven't seen a whole lot of that since the Oklahoma game. So I do think it starts with that run game, because that's the easiest way for an offensive lineman to gain some confidence and really start to feel like they are making an impact in this game, is by firing off the line, looking at the guy ahead of them, and just displacing them for a gain of a few yards. That's the easiest way, the most tangible way. I hope that is how this team and staff comes about attacking Mississippi State early in this game Saturday afternoon.
CJ, when you look at the Texas defense against the Mississippi State offense, didn't get too much into it. Sark did talk about Blake Shapen a little bit, but as you think about what Sark said on the call, again, just a little bit about Mississippi State's offense, what do you think the keys are for the Texas defense, aside from the fact that, yes, you are going to be missing a really big part of your communication system on the back end with Michael Taff out?
Definitely. I think it's to not fall asleep in the back end, especially what you just mentioned communication-wise. Every single play has to be communicated like it's a game-deciding play in that back end. 3rd and 4th downs have to be key. You can't allow the speed of an Anthony Evans or Brennan Thompson to find free open space, because they will beat you, right? Brennan Thompson's averaging north of 19 yards per reception this year, Jeff. That is a big play waiting to happen. And the point that you've mentioned all week, all 4 of his touchdowns have come on throws over 20 yards. So he finds and creates separation. You have to be sure, without a Michael Taff, your big vocal box back there, that communication and coverage are sound. And that starts with not falling asleep against a team who will try to run the football more than I think many anticipate, given the status and nature of this offensive scheme.
What do you'll be in Starkville on Saturday. I want to know what you're looking for from a sideline demeanor, juice, whatever you want to call it, standpoint, because Sark talked about it, and it has been a challenge for this team, their 4th consecutive game playing away from home. And yes, the OU game in Dallas is a part of that, but you've had trips to Gainesville, you've gone to Lexington, and now you're going to Starkville, CJ. It's not like you just hop on a bus and go to those games. At some point, the travel does, I think, have an impact on your body from a fatigue standpoint. What are you going to be looking for on Saturday?
Yeah, it's not like 2023 where Texas played, 10 of its 12 games in the state of Texas, right? Somewhere obviously away from DKR, but they were close to home. Texas no longer able to necessarily fall back on that to lean on. But Jeff, playing on the road is interesting, because that's really where your leadership comes out, right? And we've talked about it for the Texas offense. It's hard to pinpoint one specific guy at each position that is a vocal leader, a guy that Texas can lean on as a crutch. And we point to DeAndre Moore. Well, it's tough when the offensive line isn't going well. If you're DeAndre Moore, can you walk into the offensive line huddle and say, get it together? Probably not, right? That's a tough thing to do for anybody. So who steps up? And that's going to be tough once again with Cole Hudson not expected to play. Nick Brooks playing in his 3rd game as a Longhorn. I look for somebody on that interior. Maybe it's a DJ Campbell. Maybe it's Trevor Gooseby who's saying, I've had enough of this. I'm supposed to be playing at a different level. I need y'all to start playing at that level as well. Let's rise together. So it's all about that leadership. I think defensively, Texas has it. Now, how much of that will bleed onto the offense and that complementary style, really start to be shown, Jeff, I don't know, but someone has to step up and be that vocal mouthpiece for Longhorns. Maybe it's just as simple as CJ Baxter.
Yeah. The last thing, CJ, I want to get to is it's away from the Mississippi State game and even on-field stuff. But Sark gave a pretty impassioned rant about the NCAA now allowing student athletes to bet on professional sports. Sark, he even mentioned it, and he's telling the truth. He's been pro player advocacy, pro player rights in terms of NIL and guys getting paid and getting a piece of the pie. He's all for that. He is not for gambling. He just thinks you're kind of opening Pandora's box. It's going to do more harm than good. CJ, I know you pay attention to the for entertainment purposes only lines each week when the game comes out. Me personally, I think this has the potential to be more harm than good, and you're asking for trouble. And I thought Sark made a great point in the call saying, look, we're in the business of educating people and educating them to be smart with their money and what they should do with their money. Now you're opening a pathway to where they can gamble it all away. And he admitted not all guys are going to do that, but some will. What's your take on this, CJ? It just seems really dicey for the NCAA to allow this.
Yeah, I mean, to quote Sark, and you mentioned it there, we live in an era where we have revenue sharing, NIL, publicity rights. The players now have money. So now let's give them the freedom to take that money and gamble it away, end quote by Sark. But, how does that make sense if all of this push over the last few years is to get these players paid and now you can gamble on games? It doesn't quite make a lot of sense. I feel like the NCAA is teeter-tottering on what they had stood for decades, really. And on top of this, Jeff, I mean, we follow the NBA. I'm sure many sports fans do. Yeah. The news that has come out about a player and an active coach gambling on games, potentially throwing games. I mean, it's a dangerous, slippery slope, and it's something that I wish the NCAA never opened the box for to be a possibility. Because, again, how do you police this if you now open the door just a little for legalization of gambling with student athletes in the first place? It's dangerous. It's slippery. It's hard to police, and it's only going to get worse, in my opinion.
Yep. We'll keep talking about that more here on the channel, and obviously talking more Texas and Mississippi State as we approach kickoff for Saturday's game in Starkville. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends at Hayes City Store for sponsoring it. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, get over to the site right now. You can become one and get our discounted rate. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.